Would the meeting come to order, please? This time, I'd like to call for the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would bow your head, please. Dear Heavenly Father, thank us for the many blessings we receive. Give us the strength and wisdom to govern today and do what's best for the citizens of Harnett County. Amen. Amen. Are there any additions or deletions to the published agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion has been made, properly seconded. All right. Item number 4, presentation by Enterprise regarding fleet agreement to procure vehicles for the sheriff's office. Gary?
Bill,
You got it. Okay.
Chairman, we need to vote. We need to
Oh,
vote.
I'm sorry. This, give me 1 minute. Motion has been made, properly seconded. Is there any further discussion? All right, this time all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Knew I was forgetting something. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Vice Chairman and members of the board. Wanted to bring to you a presentation from Enterprise Fleet Management, and I'd like to introduce Devin Moore. Devin is our current representative. Just to give you a little bit of a background of how we're here, why we're here, and the timing of why we're making this presentation to you today. So previously, when we started several years ago, back in, I believe it was 2013, we noticed that every year during the budget cycle, departments would ask for capital. And when I'm talking about capital, I'm actually referring to vehicles, whether it's vehicles for planning inspections, sheriff's department, emergency services, and that includes the ambulance as well. In an attempt to balance our budget, we would go in sometimes and cut back because the larger amounts, that's what you look for when you're trying to balance your budget without adding any additional constraints to either your tax base or sales tax or whatever. So, but then the departments would, have issues during the year, like if they had a vehicle that motor blew, it was no longer able to run, that would impact operations. And then they would actually have to come back, and what would happen oftentimes is they would take time during the year and ask for like 1 or 2 vehicles to replace something that had either been wrecked or the motor, it was no longer drivable or whatever. You'd wind up spending more money than what they had originally asked for in their budget. So to be able to kind of get ahead of that and be more proactive with our dollars, we looked at actually how much would each department that utilizes a fleet type service need that we could start funding. So that way we can plan as we're doing our planning, we would know, X amount for this department, X amount for that. And that way we would have a fleet that our members could use, our employees could use to provide the much needed services. And part of that, we used to finance vehicles. And we were, with the interest rate and with the size that we were, I just felt that it was just not cost effective for us to pay interest on loans when we should be able to have that capital in hand. So we had a presentation or reached out to Enterprise Fleet because, when we talked to other local government units, they had also used Fleet to manage their turnover, their ordering, that whole process. At the time, the investment that we would have had to make was not in our wheelhouse. We had, more. We had education, we had funding, personnel issues. We had just a whole lot that we had to address in order to bring our county forward. So now, I tell you that to bring you to today's presentation. Over the last several years, we have set aside a set amount of capital for the sheriff's department to purchase vehicles. And that the purchase of that vehicle also includes having it equipped, with the lights and all the equipment that they will need. So there's a long process. COVID did not help anyone, especially with the price of vehicles that have skyrocketed. It's become a very difficult task. I know Gary has had to go out to as far, I think, as Tennessee to find vehicles. And so that takes up a lot of his time, and then a lot of time when the vehicles do come in, then he has to coordinate with the vendor that actually puts that secondary equipment on it. So you've got a vehicle that comes in and typically we'll see it anywhere from, what, 2 to 4 months on average. So that's a vehicle that we cannot put back into service. So reached back out to Fleet again. I'll be done in just a minute, I promise.
Take your time.
So, but I want to, it's very important that they understand kind of where we are here. So what I want you to take a look at today is, Devin has worked with Beth Blinson in Fleet. He's also worked with Gary to create a situation to where Enterprise places orders with these manufacturers when they open up their ordering banks. So that way we get the number of vehicles that we need in line. And then he also at the same time coordinates with the vendor who does our light bars and things like that. So when those vehicles are delivered by the vendor or by the car company, then they automatically, all of that equipment is ready to put on that vehicle. So we don't have that delay in waiting. And then when that vehicle is delivered to Harnett County, it is ready for that deputy to go out and get in it and put it on the road. Everything has been done. So, and it gives us a more manageable and more cost-effective way, but it's gonna require a little bit more capital upfront from the county. And then as the opportune time, those vehicles are then sold. So as he kind of goes through his presentation, I have a little bit of a comparison of what we have seen to kind of give you a way to see what we're getting, what we're spending. And that way, it just makes more sense to me, so that we'll have vehicles at the same time every year. So I want to turn it over to Devin Moore. Thank you.
Hey, Emily,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I was
Why not?
looking at my paperwork here. Are you talking about leasing?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So what we would be doing is we would be leasing these vehicles, and then through the fleet program with Beth at the garage, that we would monitor the mileage on the vehicles, and then there is can I say sweet spot? Is that okay? There is a sweet spot with certain vehicles with the timing of the mileage and what that
I
vehicle
totally
is.
understand. When I was working, we leased our vehicle.
Yes, yes. But we still be responsible, for the insurance and all of that.
Understand.
So,
Well,
all right.
that opens up a number of questions, and you may cover this in your presentation. Okay, is there a maximum mileage and a penalty for going over that?
No, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, because it's not uncommon for some of our deputies to run 4,500 or 5,000 miles a month. Okay, as far as the upfit on the equipment, will you do that, or will you use a local contractor?
So we talked, during these conversations, we talked about that. We can use a number of people, but through our conversations, Batteries, who is very close here, has done a great work for
Batteries
you all.
of NC.
So we can use them. We use them for a lot of our other customers, so we would just stick with them.
That makes me feel a little better, because they know how we like our cars designed. Now,
Yep.
what limits are on the equipment that goes in the vehicles? As far as what type of bar light, what type of siren box, what type of walkie-talkie, charger?
You can put whatever needs to be on there. So part of this program is you'll have a client strategy manager and an account fleet coordinator who's going to work with your departments and Gary and the sheriff's office to make sure we have the right equipment kind of listed out for when these vehicles lands. We get the battery and say, hey, this is exactly what they need. Obviously, Battery already knows you all, so they'll be able to put it on the right way. So as far as limitations, no, we put whatever you need on that vehicle. It's going to get the job done.
And I believe the pricing proposal, you have already worked with Gary, so they already have that pricing
Okay.
for
Well,
the equipment.
Budget. Yep.
Yeah, we've looked at these around the state, or I have before. First off, let me tell you, you got two chiefs of police sitting there, they're retired, myself and Chief Jackers.
Yes.
So we've been down this road before. So I'm just optimistic that you've got the best plan going, but we understand we've got a lot of questions.
Perfect.
We've been through this before. We've been through this
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Tell you the truth. But I do want to hear the presentation. Go ahead.
No problem. I do appreciate you all. So again, my name's Devin. I've been with Enterprise for 10 years. Earlier this month, I hit 10 years. The first 6.5, I was on the rental car side where I was managing a fleet myself. As an area manager, I had around 1,000 vehicles in the Greensboro market. doing what your staff is doing now with making sure the mileage and the maintenance and fuel and buying and reselling and licensing titles and all of that stuff, similar to what you all are doing. So over the past 3 years, I've been with the enterprise fleet side and worked with people just like yourselves. Granville County, Lenore County, Duplin County, City of Oxford are just a few of the customers that I've worked with personally, but we have around 100 government municipalities across the state and a few thousand across the country. So quick agenda, and I know you all have a lot of questions, so please stop me throughout any of this if you have a question, okay? Quick recap on some of the conversations that we've had. So as we were meeting, we talked about the entire fleet, but specifically the sheriff's office. And what we identified was the cycle time for the sheriff's office needed to be corrected. So as we hold vehicles too long, and you just mentioned some of your sheriffs are really running up miles, what that's causing is a higher maintenance, higher fuel cost, breakdowns, downtime, additional spares, needing to buy vehicles throughout the year. To Kim's point, adding additional capital to the budget. So as we looked at that and we tried to identify, hey, when is the best time to cycle these vehicles out? So part of what Enterprise has done over the years is we partner with Ernst & Young to create a fleet planning toolkit that helps us identify the right cycle time. And what this analysis covers is all the costs associated with the vehicle. So your acquisition costs, the taxes and property taxes on it, the estimated maintenance based off of the manufacturer's maintenance schedule, anticipated fuel, downtime, anticipated resale, what the aftermarket cost is going to be. And it maps out the overall cost over whatever time period you need, either 3, 4, 8, all the way up to 12 years. And then it helps us identify, hey, from a cent per mile or just overall dollar cost, what is going to be the cheapest way to go? And what's the impact to it? And so as we did all of this homework, we identified 5 years is around the best time to hold these sheriff's vehicles, give or take a year. Obviously, some people who go higher mileage, we need to get rid of early. Other vehicles we might be able to keep longer. And again, your account fleet coordinator and your client strategy manager is going to be who is working with you all on a day-to-day basis, annual basis, quarterly basis, helping the county stay up with all of that information and that homework that we'll provide you all so we continue putting the best fleet plan together. So the model that we're going to look at, I'm going to explain that to when we get there, but it kind of breaks down how would this look from a cash flow standpoint, okay? Overall, what we're trying to do is lower the overall cost to own and operate the fleet and create a sustainable fleet plan, to Kim's point, that we can replicate each year, give or take some vehicles. It won't be set in stone from here on out, but the idea is to create a sustainable fleet plan to keep these vehicles on the road and healthy. So first off, I want to start off, when we work with government partners, we do know there's a due diligence piece to that. So we are members of Sourcewell and the other 3 up there, TIPS, E&I, and we've been awarded their fleet management services RFP that they put out. Harnett County is a part of Sourcewell, so that due diligence piece has already been satisfied from Sourcewell, which is what our government partners use when it comes to securing fleet management services through Enterprise. So again, just a few of the customers that we have here in the state on the eastern side of the state. Like I said, Granville, Rocky Mount, the city of Chicago. I put that one up there because they've been with us for 20 plus years. They have a little over 1,000 vehicles, and they've seen a lot of success with maintaining a stable fleet plan throughout all of these decades. So part of what we do is everything on this wheel. So we help acquire vehicles, funding pieces, and we have a few different funding options. We'll handle the license titles for these vehicles outside of confidential plates. Again, we talked about the aftermarket. We can simply use batteries to help coordinate the aftermarket piece, and along with paying that aftermarket, so you all get one consolidated bill. We do have maintenance programs, but you all have on-site maintenance, so it's perfect. Fuel programs. We do offer telematics, driver safety, and then our biggest add is our ability to resell vehicles, which that equity does come back to the county. So again, talking about when is the best time to sell a vehicle or cycle that vehicle out. As soon as you buy a vehicle and it's registered and it becomes technically a used vehicle is when it takes the first big depreciation hit. The next time is when it gets out of the manufacturer's warranty. The third time is when it does hit 100,000 miles, and then after that, it just kind of keeps declining in overall resale. Your maintenance and fuel goes the exact opposite way. When it gets up to that first set of brakes, when you get up to when you need your transmission checked and things of that nature, and then the older it gets, the more miles it gets, the more expensive the maintenance continues on that vehicle. So our job, again, based off of all the homework and the tools and data that we have, is trying to hit that circle right there to try to minimize and the overall operational costs, but still capture that equity in the fleet so that we can reinvest it into the next vehicle, which keeps the fleet healthy and lowers overall cost. So as we look at the overall fleet list, this is the county's fleet list, and around 200 of those are the sheriff's office. So a few things I wanted to point out. First, your average holding period is around 17 years. So no, not every vehicle in your fleet is 17 years, but we do have some that's over 20. We got over 100 that's 10 years old. And again, the only thing that's creating is higher maintenance and fuel costs and lower resale to reinvest back into the fleet. So when you all are currently selling vehicles, when you sell them on govdeals.com, we're getting a few $1,000s back. And the idea is when we shorten that cycle, sell a vehicle that's a little bit newer with less miles, start capturing $5,000 to $10,000+ in equity, we reinvest that into the next vehicle to cut down the acquisition cost of the next one. But also your operating expenses starts over. You get better fuel economy with the newer vehicles, and your maintenance comes back down very considerably because the first year or so is only oil changes for that vehicle. So what we're going to focus on is how do we get out of these older vehicles, but be conservative and smart with the overall dollars that we're spending and how that looks. So I want to recap the leasing piece really quick, and then we'll look at the model where there's a ton of numbers. So to your point, when it comes to leasing, what people typically think of when they hear leasing is your traditional dealership lease, which is what's called a net lease. So when you go to a dealership and you lease a vehicle, what they're trying to do is get you to pay down the depreciation for that vehicle so that when you turn it in, they can resell it and get profit, which is why there's mileage penalties and wear and tear penalties, because every mile you go over their set amount is less resale they get. If it comes back with dents and dings, is less they can sell it for, so they're losing profit, which is why they have to charge the customer for that. Now, with our open-ended equity lease, none of that applies, okay? So you can go however many miles you need to. Now, obviously, we'll monitor that because we want to make sure we hit that sweet spot based off of the graph previously. You put whatever aftermarket on there. If there is damage to the vehicle, you won't get penalized from us. The impact you will just see in the resale. So obviously, if you sell a vehicle and the door is missing, it's not going to sell as well if it's still there. So to recap our leasing model, and this is an example. If you paid cash for a vehicle and it was $42,000, you would stroke a check for $42,000 out of your budget right away. Or if you financed it, your estimated principal will be around $875. So with leasing, the only thing that makes a finance a lease is a unpaid principal. So in this case, we would leave an unpaid principal to your vehicle, which would lower the dollar amount that you're actually paying on, because we want to use just the useful life of that vehicle. So in this case, we would leave an unpaid principal of $10,000. That right there would lower your estimated monthly principal. At the end of it, we would still sell it at 48 months. In this case, you would get $12,000 back in equity. So you saved cash flow initially with the unpaid principal. You would still get your equity back on the back end that we would reuse into the next vehicle. So in this case, if we got $12,000, put it into another $42,000 vehicle, now we're looking at a $30,000 vehicle, same principal. We would leave an unpaid principal. Your monthly payments come down. You got a brand new vehicle. Operating expenses are starting over. So I know I went through that leasing piece really quick. Is there any questions before we get into a ton of the numbers?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a time limit on your mileage?
No,
those cars?
Nope. So the way this would look is, again, based off of the information as we gather, types of vehicles, average mileage, we'll suggest, hey, for this vehicle, for the mileage pattern for this, we suggest holding it for 5 years. When we get to that 5 years, again, your client strategy manager will look at the overall resale equity and what the market is doing, say, hey, we should replace this, and here's the financial impact to it. So to answer your question, no, there's no kind of stipulation to say, hey, at this month, we have to replace it. That does change. So part of the open-end equity lease is the flexibility to it. So if we do notice one driver is driving a ton of miles, instead of holding it for 5 years, we might want to get rid of it at 4.
Before.
So it's flexibility there. Vice versa, if we set this up on a term and somebody has only went 40,000 miles, it might be financially best to keep that vehicle for an additional year, so we can extend it out to 6 years. So no, there's no set time, but we will provide guidelines to it so that we all can say, hey, around this time, this is when we should sell it. But again, the fleet is yours. We're here to consult and provide all that information so we can make the best decision regarding the fleet.
One more question, I'm sorry. We are the employees or the citizens of Hunter County have the privilege of buying these lease cars once that lease is up.
You said, does your employees or the citizens have the option to buy?
To buy the cars after that lease is up.
Yes. So we would recommend allowing us to sell these leased vehicles. Main reason why is our ability to sell vehicles is better than anybody in the country. To run down that really quick, the rental side has around 2 million vehicles. In order to hold a fleet that well, you have to be efficient and well at selling vehicles. The rental side actually makes the majority of their vehicles on the resale. So I say all that to say, when it comes to leased vehicles, we would urge to sell those vehicles for you so we can maximize the resale. Now, with that being said, if you all do say, hey, I wanted to sell this vehicle to one of our employees, again, we'll give you the information to say, hey, this vehicle is worth X, but you
Well-
can sell it to them for Y.
I'm talking about if any of the employees of the county or any citizen have the privilege to buy these leased vehicles once those vehicles are turned in. Once that time limit is up, you're gonna put it on the market anyway. But I'm saying, what if one of our directors or someone else want to purchase that car after that time limit of the mileage? Because you're gonna have a time limit on mileage.
Yeah, again, they can purchase it. We would let you know, hey, the market value for this vehicle is X.
Okay.
If you sell it for less, you would take a loss. If you want to sell it for more, cool. But there is an option for that.
But okay, that's what I want to know. Because some of those vehicles, I mean, when the lease time is up, those vehicles are in good shape.
Yes.
Depending on if the person is driving those vehicles, keep them in good shape.
Yes.
That means a timely of taking them and having the oil change and all that kind. You will have a timely schedule for that, right?
For the maintenance?
For the county servicing those vehicles
Yes.
based on the mileage and all.
Yep. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit when we kind of
Okay.
get to the
All right.
fuel piece.
I understand.
Am I understanding the basis of your plan here is to rotate patrol vehicles every 5 years?
Right around 5 years. Yes.
Now, does all of this include all county vehicles?
So we can include county vehicles. So we talked about what we call the white fleet. So the fleet that Beth has, we have talked about that, and there is an opportunity for that. The majority of our conversation lately has been geared around the sheriff's vehicles.
Okay.
Again, they're the most expensive. They do the most miles. The driving patterns for them are the harshest. So
Our patrol cars, our ambulances, and our Hornet Regional Water vehicles take the most beat.
yep.
Because they're sitting in a site somewhere idling and got thousands upon thousands of hours on the engine that doesn't necessarily compare with the other vehicles.
Yes.
So that comes into play. But you're basing all of this on, for the sheriff's office, on 5 years.
Right at 5 years. Yep.
I'll be honest with you, the reason why I ask is I was on the job for 34 years. Okay. Most of the time, when you get about 3.5 years, depending on how the vehicle's been looked at, it wore out. That's why Trying to figure out how you think you can get another year and a half out of it.
Yep. So again, based off of the information we had, 5 years worked out best. Now, as we do even more digging with the sheriff's office and we, to your point, idle time, identify idle time is a little bit higher than what I expected because idle time is kind of hard to measure or gather that data without some kind of telematics provider. Right. So based off of the mileage, that 5 years is what worked out. So we'll talk about telematics in just a little bit, but to your point, the open-ended equity lease allows us to cycle those vehicles out a little bit earlier. So as we identify this, we don't always have to stick to 5 years. Maybe after the first year or so, we identify, hey, these next ones need to be on 4 years. We can adjust that as well.
But the point is that as this data is collected and the maintenance and all of that, they will be able to monitor in almost real time the mileage per vehicle. And it will depend on each vehicle and how it's being driven, the mileage of it.
The big thing I want to see here is, one, I don't want more fees tied in because they had to rotate them out early. And two, I worked here in the days after Jack Brock when everything was wore slam out. I don't want our people in the field with substandard equipment. And so if I seem a little critical, it's nothing personal, but I've been there and I don't want to see our folks left shorthanded.
Completely understand.
Well, and I will say that in the meetings that we have had with Devin, Mike, Beth, and Gary and myself, we have focused on just the sheriff's vehicles because those are the ones that we seem to have more issues with either acquiring those vehicles and then that turnover. But that's why I wanted the group to understand where we came from. So over the last several years, we've monitored how we have done it. So when we looked at this presentation again, now we know how we're handling it and what our deficiencies and where our needs are, so that now we are able to, and that's why we're bringing this to you, because now we see an actual investment and a return on the county's money.
So the vehicles, does this include the jail transport the vehicles also?
Yeah. So the only vehicles that we can't do are ambulances or fire trucks. So yes, it would include what the jail has.
So if I understand what you're presenting right, is that vehicles, I know you have a 5-year plan technically, but if a vehicle mileage is out in 3.5 years, it mileages out. It hits that mileage spot, right? Is that what I understand? Because, in working with the sheriff's office for a long period of time, there are deputies out there that run because of their position or the zone that they're working, do more mileage. And so that's what I wanted to make sure. It's not locked in on the time, it's locked in on mileage.
Right.
Yep.
And it also will provide
As
feedback.
long as there's no fee for pulling it out early.
No, I'm like, so your plan is 5 years.
I have another question.
Sergeant so-and-so maxes out in 3 years. There is no additional fees for that vehicle to be changed out.
So the way that would look is, again, based on the unpaid principal, we'll look at, hey, this gentleman has outpaced mileage, and ideally we would get to that before. So if we give him a brand new car in year one, he does 35,000, we would come to you all saying, hey, is it potentially to rotate this to another person? Should we, just different options as far as to trying to extend that life so he doesn't hit 100 in 2.5 years. But to answer that question, there is an unpaid principal. So when he's creeping up on that mileage mark, we would look, hey, how much is this vehicle worth? What's left on the books? Is it feasible for us to sell that, and can we capture some kind of equity? If the answer to that is yes, then we'll simply, all right, let's go ahead and start acquiring a new vehicle for him to get out of this and start that process over. So the penalty, there's no penalty. It's not like we're going to say, hey, because you're turning in early, here goes a $5,000 penalty. It's the other factors that go with that from the funding piece that we'll look at. There is one fee for us to sell vehicles, which is $400 for you all. And that's for our resale teams, their man hours and their expertise to actually facilitate the sale of those vehicles. But it's just a one-time fee of $400.
The gentle lady had a question.
Oh, I just have one question. You're saying this is only being presented on the behalf of the sheriff department. But we have a lot of employee staff, our staff, driving county cars. And I'm wondering if at some point, those that have a lot of miles to travel across, well, the state as well as this county, would that opportunity be given to them for a lease car? That's what I'm interested in. Because
Yes.
that's still a lot of money we paying for these cars. And I have proposed this many years ago.
Yes, ma'am. So Commissioner McCoy, I will say that during our discussions, we have talked about planning, facilities, all the other departments. Right now, I will say that Beth Blinson as the fleet director is doing an outstanding job looking at those vehicles, that mileage, providing feedback to those department heads to say, okay, now it's time to put this on Gov Deals. So, and with the maintenance that's been done on them. So right now, she is handling that. There's not really enough activity in those departments that would be beneficial to us, because we're actually able to do that ourselves right now because it's a very small small compared to
Okay,
the sheriff's
I got
department.
you. I got you. I'm asking these questions because we've had this discussion before, and we used to use a lot of county vans just for the county commissioners and all to travel on, going to different conferences or whatever. You know, that's the only reason I'm asking these questions, and not for them, because I think if a leased car, some of those cars are in good shape when they turn them back in, and I personally feel that if the car is in good shape, you should give the citizens or the staff an opportunity to purchase those cars.
Yes.
I have another question.
Yes.
Okay, you made reference to the outstanding principle on the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
A vehicle's 3.5 years old, let's say, got 100,000 miles on it, you decide to pull it, it's got an outstanding,
Unpaid
mortgage,
principal or yep,
unpaid
book value.
balance, and you sell it and it falls short of what's owed on it. We have to eat that, is that correct?
And that's our job not to let that happen. But yes, essentially that's what would
Theoretically,
happen.
it could.
Yes. So, and again, that's why your client strategy manager, account fleet coordinator meets with you all. Your account fleet coordinator is day to day, so you can call them, email them any day. But your client strategy manager will meet with you 3 to 4 times a year, so we do not get in that situation. Now, unfortunately, it does happen at times. It hasn't happened since I've been with Fleet for the past 3 to 4 years, but it is possible for it to happen. But again, it's our job to get ahead of that and set vehicles up on the right terms. So as we're talking with Gary and we're looking at the list of vehicles that need to be replaced, and he says, hey, these 10 people really do higher mileage, we won't put them on a 4-year, we'll put them on a 3-year term. Make sure we depreciate it quick enough so that if we do need to get rid of it at 2.5 years, we're in an equity position. So the model that I put together, again, back to the cycle time, as we determine, hey, the cycle time for the sheriff's vehicles is not ideal and we need to shorten that. So after we figured out, hey, 5 years is ideally the best time. Now we wanted to compare, hey, if you did this with cash, with your current process, versus if we did that same plan through our leasing model and how that shakes out. So out of the 200 vehicles, we landed on 40 vehicles a year, which would get us right at 5 years, okay? So as we look at this, if you went out and bought 40 of those sheriff's vehicles, and the vehicle that's in this model are the Ford Explorers with around $15,000+ of upfit to them. So if you did that yourself, you would spend $2.5 million of equity right away, okay? I mean, of capital to acquire those vehicles. So instead of paying cash for them, we would lease those vehicles and put them on a term. And you see your annual payments of around $500,000 and your upfront cost of around $670,000. Now, what your upfront cost consists of is your property tax, your initial license fee, and the aftermarket cost of $15,000 is roped up into that. So, which is why you see your upfront cost at $670,000. So all in year one, we could get around 40 vehicles for just over $1 million. And then as the program continues, what you'll see is your annual payments go up just a little bit. and your overall total savings go up. But as we map this out over 5 years versus you all paying cash of around $2.2 million for 5 years versus leasing these vehicles and getting that fleet healthier, we would save around just under $2 million from overall cash flow. Now, in both cases, if you did this 40-40 yourselves, or if you did it with us, your operating expenses would decrease drastically. So as we cut down the cycle time by more than half, your operating expenses ideally would cut down in half as well. You're cutting out a ton of additional brakes and tires. You're cutting out your transmission problems, at least the frequency of them. You're cutting out the frequency of how often engines go down, things of that nature. You're drastically improving your average miles per gallon for the fleet, which is lowering your fuel consumption, which would just lower overall fuel costs. So in both cases, as we cut the cycle time down, those operating expenses will decrease, which is why you don't see it up here, because if we're comparing the same plan, they will decrease at the same rate. But what we're looking at is what's the cash flow associated with trying to implement the plan that we both kind of agreed on of trying to get to a 5-year cycle for the fleet. And this is how the numbers shake out. So a ton of numbers up there. One thing this does not include, again, is the resale piece for your current fleet. So if we did sell 40 vehicles, ideally we would get money back for those one way or the other that you could put back into the overall fund to lower the capital outlay of the fleet. And then what you see at the end in year 5 of us selling those first 40, close to around $400,000+ of equity that you would put back into your fleet. And then for year 6, what you would see is your annual payments decrease by a couple $100,000. As we continue to rinse and repeat that, your annual payments will continue to creep down $150,000, $200,000 a year until we get to a conservative, sustainable kind of easy budget to manage. Again, your operating expenses will stay relatively in line based off of the mileage patterns. So, are there any questions on what this looks like, how we got to these numbers? Or is there anything additional, numbers-wise, that you would like to see that I can put together?
So if I could just add, I know this looks like sticker shock, but when you start digging into the numbers, back when we started the fleet capital plan for the sheriff's department, the county appropriates $650,000 every year for the sheriff to be able to purchase vehicles. That coupled along with the expense, the issues that we've had with COVID, the issues in finding vehicles, the market, the cost of vehicles skyrocketing. And then, so I pulled a few numbers a while ago. So in 2021, we spent $825,037 to purchase 27 vehicles. And that's no equipment. In 2022, we were not able to purchase any. So that's still our $650,000 that went into that fund, because we continue to fund it whether we purchase it or not. In 23, we spent $432,948 and purchased 10 vehicles. In 24, we spent $1,470,000. That was to purchase 25 vehicles, but $313,000 of that was upfit cost. And then for the current year, we've only purchased 2 vehicles. I think we have some on order, but they have yet to arrive. And here we are, we're just about at June at our year end. So this is all, the reason I wanted to be able to bring this to you today is to show that what we've tried to do is, it has not been sustainable because Gary is not able to have access to those fleets. Enterprise is one of the top ones that when when the vendor or the vehicle manufacturer opens their order banks, they're there with those orders. And so I kind of feel like, I won't say priority, but I feel like they're in a better position to get those vehicles at a better rate. So now we're buying from dealerships all over. Like I said, we're having to go out to Tennessee and get those. We're having to have them shipped in from Wilmington. I mean, they're all over the place. So there's no consistency, and the timing is not there. So if you have vehicles that you need a vehicle, you've got to wait. And then there's the coordination with Batteries of NC to order their accessories, and then to wait in line with everyone else to get those on. So we're not seeing a consistent and a consistent timing of these vehicles coming in. And I will also note that, over the last 4 years, we have sold those vehicles some of the vehicles that we've had. I don't have a number count on that, but we have, sold the vehicles that we have, and we have collected $95,520 out of those vehicles that we've purchased. So when you kind of sit down and do the math, I mean, we're not able to consistently provide the capital fleet. And my hope is that by going with Enterprise, it gives us access to those vehicles. And the pricing per unit is basically in line with what we've been doing. But what we'll also get back are the analytics that tells us, okay, you have this car that's going this many miles, you need to address this. So we'll get those analytics back, and then we'll also free up a lot of staff time, and it's more business, I think.
So to walk through what Kim was just mentioning about the ordering piece to that. So to her point, when ordering banks open up, ideally we would start placing orders for your overall fleet. So again, back to your client strategy manager, and I know I've mentioned that person a few times, but they're really who makes this program work. They're going to meet with you all multiple times, and one of those times is earlier in the calendar year to budget and create the fleet plan for the new fiscal year coming up. So when the ordering banks do open, we can place orders ahead of time. Now, when the ordering banks open, it's typically around May, June, sometimes April, which is towards the tail end of your budget year. And typically most government municipalities wait till July 1st to start placing orders, okay? Now, when we place an order for you all, the county does not pay for that vehicle until it actually lands, okay? So when we place an order and it doesn't land until July 2nd, then your first payment is until the following month. So that allows us, to Kim's point, get these orders in ahead of time so that we can try to get these vehicles in service earlier in the fiscal year. On the flip side, when we do order vehicles, when the VIN number is populated, then we would reach out to batteries saying, hey, the VIN number is populated, it's X amount of weeks until it gets to you. Can you go ahead and order the parts for this vehicle? So ideally, they arrive at batteries around the same time, and then they just have to install it. Instead of getting a vehicle, telling battery, hey, we need these parts, the vehicle is sitting while the parts are there, and then sitting until it's upfitted, and then we finally get it in service. So ideally, when we are planning for your overall fleet, we're speeding up or moving up that time frame for ordering vehicles so that we can try to get them earlier in the fiscal year. And again, we can do the acquisition piece a few different ways. Again, factory ordering is typically the best way, but if the state contract is cheaper than the factory order price, we will simply go through state contract pricing or dealers, but still order these vehicles ahead of your budget date and ahead of every other government municipality in the state so that we can get these vehicles earlier in the fiscal year again, and then get them upfitted so that we can have these vehicles in your staff's hands before now. So from the resale standpoint, again, we talked a little bit about resale, but as we are reselling these vehicles, that equity does go back to the overall county. The reason I got this graph up here is to talk about the Black Book Value in the Industry Index, okay? So I know everybody's heard of the Kelley Blue Book, which is the retail index for selling vehicles. The Black Book Value Commercial Index is the wholesale or the commercial index for selling vehicles, which is basically the auction. And so when you see that number of 109% above Black Book Value, we're typically getting 9% above whatever the auction is saying that vehicle is worth. So if we go and say, hey, the auction says it's worth $10,000, we're typically able to get $100 above that. It usually shakes out to be around $1,200 to $1,500 of additional resale back into the fleet. Again, you add that up over 200 vehicles, that's a lot of additional capital coming back into the overall budget. Our team will work to do all that facilitating for you. Again, another piece that the sheriff's office and any other staff member doesn't have to do is get it ready for govdeals.com and post pictures and do all that aspect. When the vehicle is ready to be surplus, you all will let us know, hey, new vehicle arrived. This old vehicle needs to be picked up. We'll coordinate that aspect, get it sold off, and handle the admin piece ourselves, so you all can have time, so your staff can have time back in the day. So one of the things that's going to help us collect data is our fuel program. So the county's already on WEX. We also partner with WEX. It would be a simple WEX transfer for that piece. Everything from what you're currently seeing would look the same. It would just be new gas cards issued with the Enterprise Fleet Management brand on there. Now, Commissioner, you asked a question earlier about the service and maintenance piece of vehicles, and this is what's going to help do this. So as your drivers, your staff is getting gas and they're putting the odometers in and their PIN number in, so we know who got gas, all of that is going to start recording into our overall website. And so when the mileage hits a certain point, whoever needs to get this alert, but there will be an alert sent out saying, hey, vehicle number 512 is due for service, which is going to prompt them to get into the maintenance shop so they can get maintenance done. When the maintenance is done, it'll reset, and then so forth and so forth. So there are controls in place to make sure vehicles are getting service done at the right mileage pattern throughout the history of that vehicle. This will also help with, go ahead. Oh.
I said, that's good.
This will also help with managing miles or annual miles for some of your drivers. So again, this is going to help us determine, hey, vehicle 515 is really running up the miles. Let's figure out a different plan to help manage this vehicle. And overall fuel consumption as well. So if we see one vehicle is underperforming from a miles per gallon standpoint, again, that's an indicator we might need to sell that vehicle. So having this program is going to help collect a lot of data to help us continue providing the best recommendation for you all, doing a lot of homework, and again, presenting to you all, hey, this is what our ideal plan looks like. What is your thoughts? Which plan we're going to go for, so you all can say yay or nay too, okay? And then telematics piece. So we do offer telematics, and the reason I wanted to run through this is because of what you mentioned earlier about the idle time and engine hours. So with telematics, overall GPS, so you can see where your drivers are going. We will not have access to that. I can't log in to see where your staff members are at, but you all will have access to that. This also is another touch point for mileage. It will update mileage every night, but it does calculate the overall engine hours. So when it comes to that piece, we can see, hey, this driver is idling for 3.5 to 4 hours a day. There's a conversation that needs to be had, or that will just allow us to, hey, maybe we do need to speed this process up. Maybe we need to get rid of this vehicle earlier because of the engine miles compared with the mileage on there. This will also help out with miles per gallon. It also helps out with driver safety and driver scorecards, accident recreation, a little bit of everything. You can add zoning to the Geo tab. So if somebody's not supposed to go out the county with the vehicle, you all will get an alert with that. Ton of features that comes with telematics, but this would be one piece that would help out with the engine hours and idle time for the fleet, so that we can have a ton of data point to make sure we're providing the best recommendation for the overall fleet. So that was all I had for now. We've went through a lot more slides and different conversations, but I wanted to try to keep it as short as possible for you all. But are there any additional questions that I can try to answer for you all?
I just have one. The fleet, as it's sitting there, how are you allowing, Major Manil might have to answer, how are you going to allow for a vehicle that goes down, during a shift? Because, supervising a shift, it's not uncommon for a vehicle to go down. How do you handle that with this program?
We will still maintain spare vehicles. We will always rotate them down and maintain a spare vehicle fleet.
So part of what we do is working with Gary often when it comes to the overall fleet. So again, if we have a fleet plan, we present it to everybody and he says, hey, we need to keep these for spares. That's completely fine. We typically suggest the sheriff's office to have X amount of spares for the overall fleet because we do know things happen. Accidents happen more often with the sheriff's office. Vehicles still need to get maintenance, but drivers still need to be on the road. So there will still be spares to this. It might shrink the number of spares because the fleet is healthier. Ideally, there's less downtime, but at the same time, we're not going to get rid of spares, and he'll have to say so on that and what he actually needs.
Thank you.
I got just one more question. Kim, have you figured in the savings based on these vehicles that's been totally lost by the sheriff's department?
Not total, but the number that I gave you of 95,000, those are the vehicles, that's what we've collected from selling vehicles.
Selling
And
vehicles?
I don't mean to put Beth on the spot, but that's about how many vehicles, you know, off the top of your head?
I'd have to double check that number.
Well, just for the current year, we've purchased, and basically 25 is just about done. We've sold, $9,980. I mean, that's what we've collected for the year. So, I don't remember how many vehicles that was. I really don't. But one of the reasons why we also, wanted to present this to you is because, if the county does, you would have to approve for us to engage in this because this amount will be over the manager's ability to sign. So you would have to actually approve the county, to enter into this contract if you decide to move forward with that. And I also say that the timing of it, the timing of the delivery of vehicles would also help because right now, departments, they scramble to get these vehicles in because if they are not on the county property by midnight, June 30th, then it doesn't come out of this year's appropriation. We have to pay out of next year's money, then reappropriate the fund balance. So there's always that timing thing.
Is Batteries Plus considered our property? With Batteries Plus, if they're delivered to Batteries Plus to get the finished equipment on there, is that considered? So they have to be on site?
They have to be on. And based upon the timing, if I understand the calendar correctly, they would be on our property way before now. I think if you get them in, we're looking at probably,
Yeah, depending on, so if we're looking at sheriff's vehicles, they would typically land towards the end of the calendar year, November timeframe. Obviously, that depends on how quick the manufacturer makes them and how quick batteries can get the vehicles upfitted. But again, as we start the process earlier for acquiring these vehicles and get them upfit, you'll have them earlier in your fiscal year. So we're trying to stay away from having brand new vehicles land in July. That also impacts the overall resale. So, for example, if you get a 25 in just a few months, when the 26 model year opens, it's technically a 1 year old, model year old vehicle, even though it has 100 miles on there. So as we get them earlier in the model year, and when we sell it later on, it's helping the overall resale. So to Kim's point, instead of getting around $90,000 when we sell vehicles, when we sell a batch, we're trying to get $400,000+ to really make an impact that we can reinvest back into the fleet. And that process goes the same for all the vehicles, not your sheriffs, your pickup trucks, your sedans, same concept.
is there any additional information that I could bring to you? Because, I know we're discussing this in a work session now. But if there's any additional information that, if you think about after you leave, go in and,
Well, that's what I was gonna suggest, is let's set it over for further discussion next week. That way we can talk about it and have some time to think about it. It's a lot to mull over. Major, do you have anything you wanna add to this?
The sheriff supports this program just because our fleet is aged. We've got a lot of vehicles on the road with 120 to 150,000 miles.
Consensus of the board?
One question, what's the timeline on this needing to be, a decision being made on this? What is that timeline frame to make it work for the next cycle of vehicles?
so if If we can address your questions for the board meeting, this next board meeting, if you choose to approve that, then that would be, we would be able to enter into a contract with Enterprise and then get out on that ordering bank that opens up, I think, here at the end of June, 1st of July.
Yep.
If not, we're gonna be
I got you.
a year back. It'll push us back a year.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like for it to be moved to, have it on the next item, the next meeting, with the ability, if the board so chooses, to move forward with it, or one way or the other.
We put it on there for further discussion with the understanding we may call it to a vote.
Yeah.
We'll put it on as a separate item now, rather than in the consent agenda.
Yeah, Barbara, you good with that? Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate you all.
Do I just need?
Thank
All
you.
right, discuss a request to adopt a resolution updating a review officer. Ira?
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, this one's pretty straightforward. The county is, by statute, supposed to have a list of review officers that can review county plats that come in for GIS and register deeds to be filed at register deeds. So the list before you is just a list of names that have the training and can do the review process. And it's just a matter of you guys approving it and keeping things moving forward. The reason for the update is there's some staff turnover and some new people that have been trained and officially ready to do it. So any questions around that?
Consent agenda.
Barbara? Put it on the consent agenda, Madam Clerk.
Will do.
Thank you, Ira.
Thank you. I'm next too.
Keep trucking.
So the next one is also around the GIS department. For about 20 years now, GIS department has been officially managed by the IT department. But because of their need to be physically located around register deeds, tax, and of course planning and development, they've always been in a separate building. And it just made a lot of sense for them to be currently where they're at. Up until the last couple of years, we realigned duties. The tax office has taken some of the duties that they were having to do facing the public. And now the tax office is doing that. So GIS being next to the tax department doesn't make as much sense anymore. And for lots of reasons, it would be very helpful for the IT director, which currently is me, to have them, or the CIO, whatever they call me today, to have them underneath in the same office location to help collaboration, as on my list, and just help us to work better together and make sure our data is being managed well and everything's working smoothly. The other benefit, like the first request that I had, the one public-facing item that GIS currently does consistently is the map review. And it makes more sense for them to be located by development services now, because the map actually has to go to development services first. They do their pieces there, and then it goes to GIS. But there's sometimes that it has to go back and forth. And so right now what's happening is they go to GIS, they get the stuff either approved or not approved. If it's not approved, sometimes they have to come back to development services, figure out what they need to do, then go back to GIS. If we get them in the same building, that eliminates that back and forth. And because we've offloaded some of the other duties, it's not as needed anymore for them to be close to tax and register deeds. It makes more sense for them to actually be in the same building as development services.
Do you want to move them down there in the building where you're at?
Basically, that's the request. And I was working on the CIP with Lisa, and she's like, we can probably do this.
I'm thinking about it. How do you think this is gonna work? You say it's gonna work better for you.
For me as a manager, yes, it'll be great to have all of my employees under one roof that I have to manage. Clint does a wonderful job with GIS. He's really done great. But honestly, Clint, is he still here? Yeah. He's going to retire on me soon. So I would just like to have them underneath of this one roof so we can, just start doing all of our stuff together, and I can manage my folks a little better, more appropriately.
I would like to add one thing. You go back to our needs assessment study that we did for our total complex. This was something that was identified as a future project. And so really what we're doing is advancing this a little bit further, sooner than we had originally planned, but it really makes sense right now. The space is available in that building to be able to do this conversion. It's a lower cost expansion of office space compared to building a brand new building. We're just adding walls and a ceiling and that kind of thing and doing the wiring that's necessary for that location.
I'm in agreement.
And we do not have a intended replacement for this space. My intent would be to leave it open at the moment. There's been a couple of options that have been presented, but at this point, kind of want to wait and see on a couple of other issues related to the PFAS addition that the HRW wants to do. If they indeed need to put that in the space next to where the old HRW offices were, those staff members may need a home, and this may be the space that they could be able to move to. So,
I'm in favor. The only reason I was thinking about it is because I know we're limited on space here in this county, our agencies and other departments too, so. I agree.
Put it on the consent agenda, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Discuss a request to approve the Buies Creek Coach Connector System Upgrades Project Ordinance. Mr. Byrd.
Good morning.
good morning.
So this is the first of 4 project ordinances that Harnett Regional Water is requesting for approval at next week's board meeting. These projects are on the CIP. This first one here, the Buies Creek and Collection System Upgrade Project, this increases the capacity, sewer capacity in the Buies Creek, Coates Corridor, and also coming into Lillington. First, the current status of this project, we are now in the process of selecting an engineer for this project. Is there any questions?
Consent agenda?
Yes.
Consent agenda, Madam Clerk. Keep on going, Mr. Byrd.
All right, and so the next one is the Irwin Downtown Utility Upgrades Project. Basically, we're relocating some water services in the downtown area. And current status here is an engineer has been selected and a contract is under review.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd. Go ahead with Old Hamilton Road.
All right, next one, Old Hamilton Road Water Extension Project. So we're gonna connect an 8-inch line on NC 82 and a 6-inch on Antioch Road. And current status, engineer has been selected and contract is under review.
Okay. Consent agenda? Consent agenda, Madam Clerk.
And so last one is the lead and copper compliance project. So this is an EPA mandated project. All lead lines or all lines in our system have to be cataloged. And so we have done that. And so, but we do have some unknown lines, and part of this project is to make those unknowns known. And if there are any lead lines, we will replace them. Current status, engineer has been selected, and we are currently reviewing a contract.
All right. Consent agenda? Consent agenda.
Thank you.
Ms. Byrd. All righty. Next item is the 25-26 recommended budget. Mr. Trout and Lisa McFadden.
Good morning. We wanted to start with a couple of the follow-up items from the public hearing that came up last week. One of the items is the Board of Elections Outreach Specialist position. If the board wanted to move forward with that, the salary and benefits and equipment cost would be a little over $68,000. Another item that was brought up was mental health funding. We have increased that over last year's budget by $200,000 for the behavioral health urgent care. And also EMS squad funding, we have been increasing that at least 10% over the last 3 fiscal years. Another item was the DSS program funding. No DSS programs were cut by the county. Right now, the state has taken over a bulk of the energy program. They took that back over, so they're not funneling the money through the county. So that decreased that percentage. And we're also budgeting more on our actual activities than the estimates that the state's been giving us and the what-if situations. And also, it's important to remember that the county is reimbursed anywhere from 50 to 100% for our DSS programs. Another item that was brought up was the Cape Fear River Advisory Council. NCDEQ has an advisory group. Lynn Lambert sits on the group for Harnett County, and they actually have their next meeting here in town next Monday. The Harnett County Soil and Water Board, they also have an advisory group. We talked about public safety being a large portion of our general fund budget, which is really about 30.5%, and that covers 5 different departments: Animal Services, Emergency Services, Rescue District, Sheriff's Office, and the 911 telecommunicators. Of that 30%, 55% goes to the Sheriff's Office and 27% is for Emergency Services. We talked about Harnett County Schools. Last year, the board approved a little over $5.5 million to be set aside in contingency to help offset the lost low wealth funding from the state. We were hoping that the state would come forward and give us the rest of that funding, but as of today, they have not. And the schools requested $3.5 million of that last week. So we've gone in and adjusted the budget for next year for that increase, which increased the per pupil funding to $1,684.56, which is almost $270 per student increase. So we've made those changes in the recommended budget. And here's a list of what we have actually changed since the recommended budget was presented to you. $3.5 million in current expenses for Harnett County Schools. We removed a piece of equipment for Parks and Recreation. We have allocated $50,000 to the Economic Development Corporation for the Harnett County Jobs Campaign, and we've added a computer for Cooperative Extension. We're also allocating $500,000 in the Capital Reserve Fund for the Highland Road Extension Project for Development Services, and this is to prepare us for the Highland High School that's going to be built in a couple of years. So with that, the general fund budget has now increased to $186,987,947. And there's been no adjustments to Harnett Regional Water or solid waste budgets. So this is just an overview of what's been adjusted. And with the increase of $3.5 million for current expenses, the schools are now the number 2 category for where our tax dollars are spent. This is, in order to balance our budget, we had to increase the appropriated fund balance to $11,572,041, and I'm going to let Kimberly help with this part too on what this is going to do to our fund balance.
So, yes. So basically, with an appropriation of this, of an additional 11 million, it's going to actually take our restated unassigned fund balance down to 22.51%. Keep in mind that our policy states that our fund balance will remain between 15% and 20% as our maximum. Anything over 20%, the policy also has a specific defined purpose of pay down of debt or contribution to a capital. And so this would actually take you down just about to your max. Keep in mind that roughly, rule of thumb, for every 1 million you spend, you drop 1% in your fund balance.
Did you say it would leave our fund balance at 22%?
22%.
22%. It's still good.
It is, but I will say that with the growth that's expected for the county, the growth that we have experienced, then the needs on the citizens. I know that we have talked about the impact on the fire and rescues, the number of students that are coming in. I think you've seen some of the debt profiles, debt modeling that we've tried to do, some of the debt to some of the needs, the capital needs that we have for schools. We are looking at a potential tax increase to pay for those, even though we have been setting money aside in that debt fund to have that capital or have that money there for debt affordability due to the increase in cost. It is going to require, right now, the long-range projection, well, within 2 to 3 years, I believe, when we were looking at we're looking at implementing a tax increase in the future to cover the cost of that next school that's needed. With the expanse of service comes, the addition of positions. I know you've seen that in the last 2 or 3 years as the budget has been developed. And it's going to, I'm concerned about being that close to our maximum or to our operating range, what that's going to do to our fund balance.
All right, our,
Reevaluation coming.
yeah, but I had a question before that. Whichever one of y'all can answer this. How much, do we have an idea how much residual budget we're gonna have at the end of this budget year left?
Right now, I'm looking at about 3 to 4 million left over.
Okay, so,
But before the next year's budget, the reevaluation will be in effect, correct? It will.
It will be,
And we don't
it'll
know
be a
what that
factor in the
number will be.
next budget, yes.
And then you mentioned something one time about quarter-cent sales tax thing. Is that something that we can do, or we have to have, that has to be legislated?
come with me.
Yeah.
I would have to defer that to Dwight because I know in years gone by when it's been done, it was put on the ballot.
Okay.
But, I don't know if we can do it by act here or not.
Just asking.
Like,
We'd have to research that, I don't know. I don't know that off the top of my head, we'd have to.
Yeah, but as far as a reval, we've had so many houses and stuff built and added. Anything at this point would be speculation of what the revenue is gonna be on. Had at least, how long's it been since the last reval? 3 years? 4?
Four.
So you figure about 1,600 houses a year, 4 years, it's gonna be increased that much.
But I don't feel like we're wasting any money. I think the school investment is a great investment.
Yeah.
I think that's long overdue and being done.
Well, it may be long overdue, that's true, but people have to understand, where do we get the money? Where do we get the money for all this stuff? It takes money to run, to build schools, as well as to keep up the benefits and what we have to pay out for this county. That's what bothers me, because most people don't understand. And I know at some point, we're gonna have to have an increase in taxes.
Look, what was the tax rate before y'all lowered it?
It was-
75 cents.
How much?
75.
75 cents.
And we went to 59? Okay. What?
Miss Honeycutt's giving you the evil eye down there.
What? I'm just saying, that's a big drop.
And I think,
All right, let me suggest this. If there's any changes you want in the budget, Mr. Trout and his staff's gonna need to know it in the next few days, because we're getting closer and closer to the deadline of when we need to pass a budget. Because I don't think we want to go into a continuing resolution, so would another week give you ample time to respond and do?
I think so. I mean, our intent, I know we have a couple members that are gone today that may have some things they want to weigh in on. We plan to have it on the agenda the next 2 meetings, so that any final decisions, the second meeting in June is when we have to know what the changes are, so that we can go into have the final document ready for you on June 16th. So we still have some time. It is narrowing as far as what this budget looks like. We still have $3 million in expansion for the schools beyond the 3.5.
We do. And that's
So-
still accounted for in the total that we've got up here.
So make sure you understand, so with the request the school made of adding $3.5 million to the continuation budget, this makes the actual amount of school funding, raising it to $36.5 million roughly, whereas we were at $30 million in this year's budget with the contingency. So we're going to end up being higher. It will give the school system about, I think, they had a figure, it's about 1.5 to 2 million roughly in that area of the 9 million that they had requested. So there would still be, if you wanted to really move further on the needle as to what they wanted for their expansion, then it would take some additional funding from the board, which, in my opinion, if you want to go further, that probably is where we would have to start talking a tax increase, because with what we've done in this step, we're covering it with existing funding and the fund balance. But anything further than that additional money that I just mentioned would likely require a tax increase in order to make it happen. So that's something that we need to know. And we do have some additional questions that will, at the tail end here, that we would like to have you kind of weigh in on. And they can also be asked again next week if needed, and then any other questions you might have or discussion, we're welcome to have that at this time.
I have.
Please go ahead.
I see you have, see what I got down. The Board of Election. You need an extra person in the Board of Election to explain that, please.
Good morning, Claire Jones, Board of Elections. So the request was for an outreach position, simply because of all the changes that we have going on in the county. We've never really had the staff to get outside of business hours to do outreach to kind of connect with the community. So this person would be, that would kind of be their set, is just to go out there to the community, be involved in the community, do outreach. We currently do all the festivals. We go to events, churches, groups to discuss about elections, registrations prior to elections. But we have a lot of changes going on with our polling places. We've just got approval to split our barbecue in Anderson Creek precinct, so we're going from 13 to 15. There's a potential that some polling places may change coming up in this next year. So we want to make sure that we really improve that outreach and get connected with the community to help them be aware and educated of the changes so that they're prepared before the election. So this position would, of course, help increase our voter education and awareness. They would engage in community, engage with the community, as in having expo events, demonstrations to bring them out to kind of get familiar with the equipment. We want to increase our voter participation by organizing these outreach, helping the public to navigate election laws and changes, because as we see every time the legislation comes in, there's a whole new set of changes with the laws, just to help create education on that factor. For also misinformation management, as we saw during the last couple big elections, a lot of misinformation circling around, especially on social media. You know, social media can really help you or hurt you. So this person would help with that. Create partnerships and coalitions, collect feedback and data collection, and just building trust in the election process. Currently, we do work with Desiree with a lot of stuff, but Desiree can't be everywhere all the time, especially when she's doing things with other departments. So we will continue this position to work with Desiree to help keep that uniformity of the county management of county outreach in Harnett County. But we just have a lot more things going on and a lot more things we want to do that Desiree herself could not do, and then my staff cannot do as well, being that we have to be in the office Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So the biggest thing with this position is they'll be doing a lot of after-hours weekend work, because that's where the community is.
Well, I totally understand what you're reporting, but to me, it seems like you were doing this in the last election. I mean, you all had a lot of outreach. I had you to come to a place or two for me, and you had the staff to do that with.
Yeah, we did get
Let me finish this.
Okay.
So that is where I'm trying to understand why is the need for this person. But I know this coming election is going to be a very heavy election, and it's gonna be a very serious election. I do know that the state legislature is changing laws every single day, trying to make it more difficult for people to vote. So, I'm not against it, but got one more question to ask you. Have you discussed it with your board?
Yes. And my board is on
So your board is on board.
with requesting this change. This is something that the board did vote on at a meeting to request this expansion request as well as the pay increase for the poll workers. So the board is in
No, the
agreement
pay,
of
pay, don't
this.
say about pay increase. You supposed to get that pay increase last election. So please don't bring that
Yeah.
up. Because I had a lot of people running me down about that money. So let's make sure they get that money this year.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
And I would like to add, we did try very hard this last election cycle to increase our outreach. We did get an additional position, and I do thank you guys for that a couple budgets ago. But we also, because of the election and trying to balance that outreach with our daily functions, we also had to increase our budget for the comp time overtime this past fiscal year to compensate for the fact that we were working 8 to 5 Monday through Friday plus all the nights and weekends. So having this additional position will cut back on that overtime that we had to pay out last budget year.
So I only asked the question because if we add in more staff, that still affects our budget. But now, I do think it's necessary if all the outfits that you have given me is the reason that you want. So, I'm in favor for it, but it's gotta be voted on by our board. Thank you, Claire,
Okay,
I
you're
appreciate
welcome.
you. Another question I have is, how many more schools are we building now? How many schools, are we building now? You keep mentioning Highland. It's an
Yes.
add-on school out there for Highland, right?
Yes, it would be an additional high school, and we would expect that based on the plan that was provided by the school district, that next year they would come and request the board to authorize the funding for the new high school.
By that time.
And one more question, I'm sorry, Bill.
No,
But I want to know exactly how many schools are we building in the future here, right now that we are already planning for? Because there's certainly a need with all this new growth that we have coming into this county. We cannot continue to let education be the last thing on the table. I do know there's a plan to build a school in Bush Creek, right?
Right?
The plan to build the school, it's an elementary school, am I not right? Or is it a middle school at, on 401?
Yes.
That plan has been going on for years.
And they should be breaking ground very soon on the middle school.
Okay,
That should be breaking ground. We've approved the funding, project's been let, and they should be breaking ground very soon on that project. Then the next would be the high school, and then based on their plan, they do have a Bowie Creek Elementary replacement school, and then there would be an additional elementary school, would be the fourth school in the list. After that, it gets a little.
where would that be located?
Yeah, that I believe is in the northern part of the county, if I remember this request. But obviously, that's probably 3 to 4 years out, so a decision exactly where that school would be built hasn't been made, and I'm not sure they have the land for that at this point either.
But there's a future plan to build.
But it is, yes, that's the focus right now is 4 schools, middle school, high school, and 2 elementaries. One of those elementaries being a replacement, which will likely be larger than the current size, and then the next school would be a new school rather than a replacement school. So 4 schools that are currently the top priorities at the school district.
The Board of Education owns a 100-acre plus tract up there.
Okay, that's good to know. I wasn't aware of that. Thank you.
But I only asking these questions because I like to know what I'm talking about when I'm speaking to the public. And that is one of the subjects that you always face with. Schools. Some people say, why are you building so much schools? And I said, well, I don't know what kind of place you're at in life. If you look around every day, they're building houses on top of the houses here.
Right. And as far as the school construction, when we get into the discussion related to the reevaluation next year, as we prepare our budget, that is something that we will have a longer conversation about, because we may not want to reduce the levy as much when the revow happens, in order to ensure that we start setting aside the funding to help us pay the debt that's going to occur when we add those next two schools. We think we're covered, likely based on the formula for the high school part, without having to raise taxes, but the next two schools, that additional debt may require us to hold on to some of that levy and the revaluation in order to pay for those.
And the money is already there for the Shouttown Elementary School gym, right?
Yes.
Thank God.
One thing you can get Betty for
What is that?
is the projections, estimated cost for Highland High School,
Yeah,
100 million.
I can believe it. I
I mean,
mean,
they're just going through the roof.
things are going, and it's gonna get worse.
Right.
It's really gonna get worse. That's when I'm asking these questions to see when we're gonna move on these things, because the material and all is gonna really make it just about impossible. And we live in a middle income county, and it's just X amount of money that's here. People, I mean, you can raise taxes, but you don't wanna raise taxes so people can't continue to have a normal lifestyle. But these things are much needed, especially the school on 401. That school been planning to be built for the last 5 or 6 years, and I ain't seen a brick, not a sand move yet. So,
One thing on your list here of board discussion items is the fire district recommended tax increase.
Yes.
I can understand some of them, like Irwin has put in for 1 cent, because they're actually gonna route their employee pay through the town of Irwin, and so they can have some retirement and that kind of thing. But I saw one, where it's a department that's divided over 2 counties, and they just wanna raise the taxes in Harnett County, so it'll match the 15 cent they're getting in Cumberland County.
Yeah.
I can't.
we can't.
You know, if they need something, tell us, and we'll certainly consider it. But just to raise it because their other tax base is higher, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So,
I'm against, if that's the reason.
it is, we were talking about it the other day.
I agree, we can't compete with Cumberland County, Norway County.
I'm not
We
gonna
have to
try.
do- So what?
So I'm not gonna try because of the way they spend
Well, they
money.
can try to want to, but
But-
we know, we know what we can do in this county.
Without calling names and chiefs' names and stuff, you know who I'm talking about.
It's the West Area Department.
He called it out.
Are you okay, is the board okay with the rest of the requested increases?
What the fire department is.
What is the West Johnson one? Is that for equipment, or is that because of what Johnson?
No, their request was based on additional paid volunteer staff, training, and
Yeah,
equment.
that's what they're in business for. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
I just to raise taxes for the sake of raising it, because your other bases are higher. Doesn't make it, and I think this is the second year it's come in like that. You know, if they need a new truck or hoses or paid day staff or whatever, I don't have a problem with that. But just raise the taxes for the purpose of raising taxes.
Let me start back at the top just to make sure that we get all these covered real quick. In the approved budget, you'll approve the Harnett Regional Water's capital improvement plan. Were you okay as a board with that plan? Or were there any changes that you needed to see? Okay. The cost of living adjustments and the 401K increase, were there any changes that you wanted to see? Or were you okay with those requested amounts?
Jog my memory, the requested amount was
It was a 3% COLA and a 1% 401K increase.
Is that gonna keep up with cost of living, or is that?
On the COLA part, that is, and the plan is that on the 401K, We're going from 2 to 3% this year. The plan will be each of the next 2 years will increase at another 1%, and that will bring us up to where we're seeing our competitors be there. Most of them are at 5%.
5%.
And some are at 3, and some are 4, some are 5, but eventually I think we need to rise up to where we're doing a contribution of 5%. And in order to help us budget-wise, we'll just do this incrementally 1% per year until we get to the 5%.
And then that's what I'd like to see, because our employees are our biggest asset.
All right.
I
Definitely.
realize we got a budget, we got a balance too, but we'll keep good people.
And the salary adjustments for the Board of Commissioners, which will also affect the Board of Education's board, it's the same salary for both.
Lord, please give it to them, because last time I thought they were gonna have a heart attack. I mean, they try to stomp us in the ground with no more money than we get for sitting up here.
And the recommended fee increases, were y'all okay with those changes as well, or were there any adjustments you wanted to make?
What was that?
The recommended fee changes for the departments?
Oh, okay. Well, I think Brick can answer that more with the fees and all of that. I trust you with making sure that this is done properly.
I think we've all rattled the saber about tap fees and system development fees.
Well, we got the tap fees,
But
so.
with the CIP like it is and these 2 plants getting moved up, I don't know how that we can do it this year, but now, and I talked to Burns about this, the real expensive commercial 2-inch tap is like $28,000. I'd love to see it come down to match the other 2-inch, the residential 2-inch. So, got it.
We'll come up with a plan. We'll come up with a number to
Come up with something
modify
we
that
all
too.
live with.
Can't do it.
I don't think we do that many anyhow, do we, Mr. Burns?
Let's make sure it's doable. Make sure it's doable.
Yeah.
We spending money here.
And we'd also requested 14 full-time positions in the general fund. Were you okay with that list?
It looks like they're all
Yeah.
needed. So,
Okay. And are we adding the outreach position for Board of Education, or Board of Elections?
I'm for it. But that's to the board.
I think the parties do a great job of getting their base out to vote. I don't see where we need it. If you're asking me, I wouldn't put it in there. That's, that way the Board of Elections, there's nothing anybody can say about, well, you did more for this party than that party. Leave it up to the parties to get their base out to vote and go from there. But now everybody may not feel that way.
Now, what were you saying?
Talking about the
I
position.
mean, what was your position on it?
Oh, I don't want to fund it.
You don't want to fund it? Well, I'm for it simply because there's been so many changes on the state level. And they're still coming down. I mean, changes that's been decided by the state legislature. I don't know about funding it for forever. I mean, I think maybe funding it for the period of the election might be one of the best way to pay for it or to fund it. So after the election, what does this person do? They don't have a lot of outreach and all of that that I know of. I mean, that's just me.
Is that something that we can work with Board of Elections and come back next week with some more
I think that's something we
information?
need to work with. I don't think it needs to be a permanent position there. If it needs to be rekindled again during an election period, I think it's much needed because we do have a lot of growth here. And this is very important for people to have the ability to vote. And if we can make that easier for them, because like Claire said, I listened to her very carefully, there are going to be
I think
some changes in this county in the voting process.
I would like to see a version of it as a part-time position.
Okay.
And I think you just need to leave the discussion on here until we're full. the
Okay.
next meeting.
Yeah, that's, I think that's.
Leave it on there for further discussion.
But if you would, if they could come back with that one and then a part-time version of that one.
Okay, we can do that. And then we had the 7 full-time positions in our enterprise funds, 5 for Harnett Regional Water and 2 in solid waste. Were y'all okay with those? Okay.
I'm in favor.
And then we had the 22 position reclassification request in the general fund because of the change of duties and responsibilities.
Fine with that.
Okay.
One quick question, Mr. Bean. There's 2 positions gonna give you enough to what you need to do as far as, I know you're expanding hours, that kind of thing, so.
So do y'all have any other questions or changes that y'all want to see for next week?
Well, the animal shelter is already in there, right?
Yes.
We already have we purchased the land, I understand, so we'll be starting on that pretty soon, right?
Yeah, the RFQ went out last week, it's due July 9th, we'll hire an architect and then we'll move forward with the design.
If you can figure out how to do all this for about 120 million would be nice.
We'll work on that.
You do good work, Lisa.
Thank you.
I saw Mr. Burns raised his hand. Did you have something you needed to add?
On the CIP, the only change we had was moved up the water plant project.
To an earlier year.
Yeah, just one more year.
And we can get that new updated copy in the approved version.
Okay.
So next week and then the following week, we'll have time during your board meetings to discuss the budget. So if there's any questions you may have between now and then, just please let us know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All righty, looks like item number 12, discuss the Johnston Lee Harnett Community Action Group appointment.
What about that?
Did that other application ever come in?
I have not seen it, sir.
Then I just moved, we appoint Mr. Gordon Springlewood.
Say that again.
I said I moved, we don't have another application, and I just moved, we appoint Gordon Springlewood.
I'll second that.
Okay, consent agenda for next week, Madam Clerk.
Oh, you can vote.
No, it's a voting.
That's right, we got it on here to vote.
Got to be voted on.
So there's a motion and a second?
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, Madam Clerk. All right. Number 13, presentation of the Gold Leaf Foundation Community-Based Grants Incentive. Mr. Trout.
Thank you, Chairman. So Golden Leaf is a great organization that's provided grants across our state for a great period of time. They have started a new program called Community-Based Grants Initiative. They've done this in other regions already through the state, and now it's the North Central Prosperity Zone that is up for this grant opportunity. We're on the bottom part of that North Central area. So what it will do is create grant opportunities for each county, allowing them to submit up to 4 projects that total up to $2 million. No single project can exceed $1.5 million. Golden Leaf will make 3 awards into each county totaling $1.5 million. So the county managers are asked to submit project worksheets for these grants. These grants can be given to any governmental entity, so they can be given to the county, any of the towns, and also nonprofit organizations can apply. So what we're going to do is put the word out. I'll be sending out an email. I sent you an email with this information about a week ago, and then I'll be sending one out to the towns, and then we'll be making it available on the website that if individuals are interested that fit that criteria as being a governmental entity or a nonprofit, they can submit a project worksheet to me, and then we will evaluate those. So the project worksheets are going to be due to me July 8th. I've provided them to the department directors already, so they're looking at needs they may have within their department. And I'll set up a panel to review these on July 21st. We'll review them, and then I have to submit the projects by the beginning of August to Golden Leaf for their consideration. They'll provide feedback to us on the grants that we submit to them, on which ones they like, that they're interested in funding, and then we'll submit the final project list by September 4th to them for their final selection. This is a great opportunity. There's a lot of different options. Most of them, these grants will focus on providing jobs, improving quality of life within the community. So it's a great opportunity for us to get some funding for projects that we've had an interest in doing for a long time. So if you have questions, take a look at the information that I sent you previously. If you'd like to sit down and discuss further, if you know of an organization that you think may fit as a potential applicant, or there's a project that the county's been considering for a number of years that you think would be good to add for us to submit for, please let me know and we'll take a look at it. Hopefully we'll get all done. We should receive some funding for some much needed projects within our county.
Questions for the manager?
Sounds good. I mean, there are several projects I know that's been sitting out there. I know Cole's still working on Riverside. That be something that we might consider, because those people do need some assistance. We've already started the project on what money we got from the opera funding, but I know that that's not going to be enough to do what we have to do as far as that flooding. Then there may be other projects in this county that we need to consider. So I certainly would like to have that information.
Okay. Anything else? All right, we'll move on to item number 14. Discuss relocating the parole and probation office. I asked this to be put on there. I have received a great number of complaints from the business owners and various folks downtown Dutton. This office is located right on Broad Street. And like I say, I've had the mayor's contacted me, a couple of commissioners have contacted me, several business owners have contacted me, and it's been going on for months. Folks urinating on the side of the buildings and cars and stuff, and going in and out of the businesses over there and making a mess in the bathrooms. And I think the office needs to be centrally located on top of that, so it should be up here around Lillington somewhere, because right now, if a man's on probation or a woman on probation, they live in Johnsonville, they got an hour drive to get to their probation office. And so that's just some of the things why I asked for it to be put on here. I've discussed it with Mr. Trout, and we need to give him some direction on what we want to do. Everybody's for or against this.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you started it off by describing what they're doing and done, and you need to mention Lillington. You think we're going to get any phone calls now?
Yeah, well, I agree with that. So if it's in a congested area like it is downtown Dunn, nobody's going to be happy about it.
Mr. Brent, did you remember me talking to you about the building, the old medical center building?
Yeah.
In Mamers?
Mm-hmm.
That is kind of
That's
all by
an empty
itself.
building. But
Yeah, I think that there's some various opportunities that we can pursue for a location. And I think that Coley and I have had discussions about this for a while. We negotiated the last contract. At the time we negotiated, we had very few options. So we had to renew the contract in order to provide a location for them. We looked at a couple of other options and really just found nothing available. So we'll go back through. Some potential options have come up since then. So we may be able to find ourselves a new location for that. I think we got another 1.5 years left on the lease, 2 years. And so we need to work through, once we found a location, if there's a retrofit, et cetera. But we'll work through that and we'll report back what we can find.
preferably being court is in Lillington. Most of the courts in Lillington. It would be
Right.
better in Lillington.
Yes, we want to look for somewhere in this general centralized area if we can.
I totally understand why the citizens over there are complaining simply because when we moved that department over there in Dunn, we didn't have anywhere else to go. And we were moving all the other departments from Dunn, Irwin, here on this side of the river. So that was the last one that And I understand the citizens complaining and all because they had hope, they had hopes that we would have found somewhere else for them to relocate before now. The building that they were in, up here in Littleton uptown, that building is substandard. It's not, I know, it has been remodeled, so I don't know.
For many, many years, they had a secondary office in Dunn. It was downstairs at the police department. I don't know.
But they have one over here in Littleton too, over at the stoplight, going up the hill there. I remember that because that's how come we had to put them in Dunn, especially because that building was so dilapidated.
General gist of the board is let's get them moved.
Do.
Anything else on this? All right, we'll move on to item number 15, review applications for boards and committees. It looks like there's a planning board slot from District 2. And I have looked at both of the applicants and would recommend Miss Amanda Reagan. I know her, she's been involved in real estate a little bit, she's been involved in government a little bit, and would be a good asset.
I don't have anything to say on that because that's your district.
Ma'am?
I don't have anything to say on that because that's your district.
Put it on consent agenda.
Put it on consent agenda, Madam Clerk.
Will do.
All righty, the next thing is the county manager's report.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of items. You see I have listed there, we have some roads that the NC Department of Transportation would like to add to their state's secondary road system. That'll be on consent agenda for your approval at the next meeting. Also, a reminder that the Charters of Freedom celebration dedication will be May 31st at 9 a.m. here in front of the RCL building. So we will be ready, rain or shine, to do that dedication. That's all I have, Chairman.
Okay. Anything for the manager on his report? All right, Mr. Counselor, we have need for a closed session.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board go into closed session for the following purposes: to consult with and give instruction to the county staff concerning position to be taken by the county in negotiating the proposed contract for the acquisition of real property. Motion's made pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143, 318, 11A5.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Mr. Burns, Mr. Byrd, would you
Motion to adjourn. Say second, Walker. Second. All right, motion has been made, proper second. Any further discussion? All right, sound of the gavel, we're adjourned.